Ike, you've done so many things with MIGS, from the very, very start. What journey brought people to doing canaloplasty?
Yeah, before MIGS, we were doing a variety of different sterile-based procedures. And of that was born ab externo canaloplasty, where we were basically using microcatheters ab externo to intubate the canal, dilate the detention suture. And our results found that with viscodilation, we were able to get a reasonable pressure lower. Not necessarily as low as trabeculectomy, but a signal that showed that we could do something, within the canal. The mechanism here, as you know, Karl, is really to try to address the different levels of resistance in a way that would be ideally as tissue sparing as possible. So at the level of trabecular meshwork, by stretching and enhancing, trans TM flow. We know the pathology of glaucoma is in the TM, but also it's in the canal. So by, dilating the canal, expanding the canal, we know in glaucoma over time, the canal can collapse. And then trying to address the distal outflow system. There's some evidence that the disease progresses and we get downstream issues beyond the TM. By dilating, we perhaps have the chance to try to rejuvenate that. So that's kind of the background of this. And I think it's theoretically, it makes a lot of sense. And you need to, of course, have good data and good studies to look at this in more detail. But, I think the approach seems promising. And I think the safety of this is something that we'll probably talk about as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think most people will ask, okay, then when do you do it? So I guess traditional MIGS, yes, we know that probably the sort of MIGS most people know about is iStent. Sort of, I suppose it started the MIGS revolution. And this is, of course, canaloplasty different in a way. We're not really bypassing anything. So you said rejuvenation. Mm-hmm. How does that work? And how does that determine which patients you go for? Because rejuvenation, does that mean waiting until you're old and you need that Botox? Or do you start getting Botox when you're younger to prevent you from growing old?
Well, you don't need Botox, but we look good.
Natural genes.
It's a great example because, we do have options like cutting tissue, removing tissue, even bypassing the entire TM and going, into the subcon space. The pathology in glaucoma goes from a reversible stage to an irreversible state over time. And I often say that glaucoma is only young once, when we have a chance potentially to change the course of the histopathological changes. So we go from a disease where we have accumulation of extracellular matrix, an imbalance of MMPs and tissue inhibitor MMPs, and resistance building up. But that then leads to inflammation and chronic inflammation and fibrosis and sclerosis. Once we have sclerosis of the trabecular meshwork, I think that simply dilating may not be enough because we have such irreversible changes. I think that the key, as you kind of were talking about, I think is to try to address the disease early on and doing an earlier intervention. That means we can't do a biopsy to know that easily. So we look at other surrogates like duration of disease, like age, like optic nerve severity. There's some relationship, medication use, things like that to give us some idea in terms of like where it may fit. So I think for me, this is a procedure that fits earlier on, right, in terms of disease. And the nice thing is that we don't leave anything behind. It's straightforward procedure and a very safe procedure to try to rejuvenate.
So you mentioned the word intervention, which is very important. And you coined the term interventional glaucoma. And this is really important because I think there's a cultural reluctance sometimes, I think it's changing, to sort of not intervene. I see that a lot. I moved to Germany from the UK. UK maybe was a little bit more at the forefront of MIGS. In Germany, I see there's this resistance to do stuff. So people are on drops, and then they're put on more drops, and everyone's hesitant to do surgery. And actually we're saying, and I believe in it as much as you do, that actually if you act early, you are preventing disease further down the line. You're probably preventing people from having bigger surgeries. How do you convince people to go for an interventional approach?
Yeah, this is a real paradigm shift opportunity. Old habits are hard to break. Cultural attitudes sometimes take a generation to change, to be fair. I think that we have evidence that is important, first of all. We need high quality evidence. For example, we have evidence for SLT now with the life study. It's hard to avoid or do for SLT. I think this is something that is, the data supports that. We're now seeing this in the MIGS space, over 5 years, showing not only better pressure lowering and medication reduction, but reduction of need to go to secondary surgery, visual field, progression. So I think the evidence is now building. It's important. But I think for me, the harder part is more the cultural mindset,
Yeah.
And I think these are habits that are important to kind of change and understand. I think this education, like what we're doing here, I think that it's also not only that, but also it's changing the way we practice. It's easy just to prescribe drops. It's a little bit more different to talk about, I'm going to intervene, I'm going to do a laser for you, I'm going to do surgery and recommend it. We have to have the confidence in it. We also have to have the system. We changed our clinic flow to try to adopt to this approach, in terms of making sure we have clinic time to do procedures, where we have it fairly easy to go from clinic to the OR, and that is not easy for most people to do, right? Because they're in a set way. They have OR access to limited time only. They can do 20 cataracts or they can do 10 MIGS procedures. Well, which one may they choose? I can do drops, but I cannot treat cataract with drops.
Yeah.
So there's some systematic change that need to be addressed, I think, to really, get more into practices. Reimbursement and cost and access are a major factor, to be fair.
Yeah.
This additional cost, in some systems, the medications are covered by public systems, while, surgery may not be. So understandingly for patients and for physicians, it's a bigger jump to make. But I think, from a clinical perspective, it's hard not to at least consider it, especially for patients that are not doing great on drops or on a couple of medications. They're not tolerating them well. They're up and down, pressures or whatever. And you're just waiting for progression to give you an excuse. But, then you're talking about doing something more involved. So,
and there's quite a few of those patients.
There's too many of them. We see them, unfortunately, downstream, down the road, right?
Indeed. So people here, is anyone using the iTrack specifically from whoever is listening to us? I can't see any raised hands. Okay. So that's good. So, Ike's already mentioned that it basically addresses 3 different parts, or at least 3 different sections. It's not sort of the original traditional MIGS, which was just bypass the trabecular meshwork. It's not like SLT, which acts just on the trabecular meshwork. We're looking at Schlemm's canal, we're looking at collector channels. So this is the power of canaloplasty. I'm a recent adopter. So I've been doing sort of traditional glaucoma surgery, loads of MIGS with stents for ages, but canaloplasty is 1.5 years old for me, personally. But actually, I see the power of it. I see the sort of reasoning behind it. From a physiological perspective, from a medical perspective, it makes sense. So there's these 3 different components where it's working on, right? Now, if we're talking about these 3 components, as you said, we can't really measure these things, but what are the advantages of iTrack, for example, compared to other MIGS in terms of dealing with all 3 components?
Yeah, it's one of the only procedures that we can address, that third level of resistance, the collector channel level, this level level that, it's kind of frustrating sometimes where we do something in this regular meshwork, but yet TM's open, but yet the pressure may not be, lower because perhaps they have outflow resistance. I think that's one differentiation. I think that preservation of tissue, I think, is a differentiation as well, particularly in earlier disease. Once we remove tissue, it's kind of irreversible. We cannot change that. We have risks of hyphema, inflammation, pressure fluctuation. I think there's a very smooth course typically when you do this procedure. So I think I would say it's a very gentle approach. It's an intuitive approach. It may not be enough for more advanced patients with more moderate to advanced disease, to be fair. I think that the ability possibly to combine it with something else, maybe something cutting, maybe something stenting, is also something that we're exploring. But it's a kind of to me, it's almost like a base procedure you build from. You may add layers on top, depending on the complexity, but you start with a very base level of procedure. And this kind of addresses the 3 levels here.
So I think we have a couple of videos coming up soon, and we're going to explain a little bit the technique itself. And then there are quite a few questions to discuss about little bits about technique. But essentially, of course, it addresses canaloplasty, all these 3 points in terms of flow. And what is nice about the iTrack is that little red light you're seeing there on the right. So we are going to discuss on maybe how to do it. And in a second, I'll see whether we can get to one of the videos. So it should be here. And this is actually already going to show you a little bit even more of what we've been discussing, because this is a video by one of our colleagues and friends, Paul Singh, showing intraoperative OCT whilst you're doing canaloplasty. So the idea of canaloplasty originally, as Ike said, was external, but now you can do it with a minimally invasive approach, which is amazing. So you're going into the, the MIGS space, you're using your gonioscopy lens, you're going to insert this little cannula into the eye, and then you're going to insert this iTrack Advance into Schlemm's canal. Now, the one thing that even the ab externo guys use is this LED, which is flashing. So you can see it from both sides. For me, it shows you where you are. So it really know where you are in the space. It also makes you a bit more, it can be embarrassing if you're trying to show someone how good a canaloplasty surgeon you are and you're not managing to get that light through. But joking apart, I think knowing that you are in the space is one of the kind of most basic things. If you're going to do canaloplasty, you want to be able to get into that space, one, and then know that you are consistently in that space. So I can show you the video again and sort of, but I'd love Ike to sort of tell us about how he makes sure he's in the space. How do you access it? Any tips, tricks? And then how do you ensure that you are doing the right thing? What little things do you do as you go one way and then come back?
Yeah, I was gonna ask you after as well about your learning curve, but I think it starts from your goniotomy incision, getting into the canal through the retina meshwork. We were initially using blades and other techniques to get in. Now we have a newer option with the iTrack Advance, which allows us to use a single approach. That's the first step. I think that making sure that I like to angle my catheter up a little bit so we don't dive down. Probably the biggest concerns we have is number one, enter supraclaudal space, or number two, maybe hitting a collector channel and getting stuck. Those are the two things that we probably worry. It's not common. The first one can be avoided by being careful how much tension we put on the catheter and not trying to force things through. I think a good viscoelastic fill is important. I think an eye that's very soft is potentially for the catheter to go in a different direction. And also, by pressurizing the eye, it also pushes the viscoelastic downstream as well. Sometimes we do see an obstruction. I don't think the canal is blocked, but it's more like the catheter is hitting an obliquely inserted collector channel, and by pushing on the sclera or injecting viscoelastic, that we can often bypass it, or sometimes we have to go the other way around.
So we've got a video actually showing just what you're saying. So I'm going to skip to that straight away, and then we'll come back to these because these are also interesting things. But
nice example of trypan blue there.
Yes.
By the way, yeah.
So, which we will definitely look at, but I think this video here shows you exactly what you were talking about. No, actually it doesn't. This is showing you the blanching.
Very nice, yeah.
But I'm pretty sure we have a video here showing us a cannulation which kind of got blocked, or a light that disappeared. Again, a video by Paul.
Fancy videos.
So we'll get to the bit, but essentially you're injecting viscoelastic as you go forward, right?
So I mean, people do different things. I typically inject on the way in and on the way out.
Right.
And I tend to inject a lot. I figure if I'm going to be in there, I want to just have a good bolus. The downside of that is you have higher risk for decimated detachments. But if you're moving the catheter and you see it and you stop injecting, it's usually very localized. It's not significant, But I really want to get some good volume in there. So I'll do 2-3 clicks per clock hour.
Yeah.
I'll go on the way out and I'll do it on the way back as well. And that's kind of and I use typically Helon GB myself. What are your thoughts?
So that's really important. So the Helon you use is so important. I use Helon GB as well. So I think the volume and the type of viscoelastic is really important. This is the video that Paul's showing, which shows you the light down there. Can you see it? Yeah. But he can't go further forward. So you've got the white arrow showing you. So at this point, it's gone all the way around about 220 degrees, but then he can't go further forward. Can you see where the light is now? It's gone down somewhere. Yeah. So that's what you were saying. And that probably happens. Even the guys who do canaloplasty from ab externo say that in about 20% of cases, they can't feed the catheter around all the way. And this proves exactly that point. So what do you do then when that happens?
Yeah, first of all, I don't get too alarmed. I mean, I don't feel I have to do a full 360 all the time, number one. I mean, I think we're kind of, we know that even half of the angle open up, we're going to get normalization of IOP in most sides. So I typically do what I said. I inject some viscoelastic. Maybe it helps to dilate the canal, and I continue to push slowly. I put pressure on the outer wall. If it's diving, though, then you have to basically stop. But I'm talking about an obstruction. If it's diving, I typically will go around the other way. So if it's an obstruction I can't get through, or is diving in cervical space, I'll typically just, switch hands, make another incision, and go another way. And often you'll find it go right past that area of obstruction. And you're okay.
So that's
otherwise I'll do 120 degrees on one side, maybe 120 on the other side. And I think I've done a reasonable job.
Yes. So I agree. So I mean, viscoelastic, volume, type, Helon GV Pro. GV is not the same as GV Pro. So beware, because there's been changes in the viscoelastics over the last couple of years. These are all important factors. How many of you do actually other MIGS, like iStents or Hydrus or whatever? One. Yeah. So for those people who have sort of some experience or even an idea of MIGS, say iStent, what's the difference in inserting a cannula like this compared to maybe injecting something? There are little tricks of, you mentioned the angulation, for example. I think that's really important. Incision. Do you go through, if you're combining, would you go to the same phaco wound?
Yeah, I think that there's, there's nuances in each. I mean, if you're doing an iStent, I mean, the convenience of having the same incision is nice. One has to determine how much pressure you put in the trabecular meshwork when you put the stent, and that's kind of a bit of a variability. And we don't even know all the time that we're in perfect position. Here, one thing you do know if you're in or out.
Yes,
like you said, where
sure.
you're
Yeah.
I think having another incision is helpful, especially with the iTrack Advanced, because you really then can follow the angle at the right approach. I think that's important. And making sure that, I think that we start off if you start off at the right place, you're probably going to end up in the right place. So, like I said, angling the right way. I think that it's often fine enough to just make your incision with the tip of the spatula of the device. I think they like to sing around to play with. Make your incision, and then clearly see the outer wall, and then advance the catheter slowly. Particularly with this, I think slow is important. It's easy to whip around really fast.
Yes.
And that's with infinitely less control. I think also that if you really try to push hard against resistance, there can be some damage. So to the catheter. So just gentle approach, observe what's going on. You have a lit tip there, you know where you are.
Yeah.
And I think the learning curve is fairly reasonable. The harder part for people learning is visualization. Mm-hmm. Having good gonio view, telescope, that's the part that for any procedure we have to master.
Yeah. I mean, I personally find that the incision is so important. So unlike, for example, Hydrus, even sort of other MIGS, you have to go 3 clock hours away. So you really have to plan where you're going to place your initial cut, because it makes a real difference to the ergonomics. The second thing that I'm doing is I'm kind of scratching trabecular meshwork. So sort of literally just making space before I go in rather than just embedding. But the 15-degree tilt, I mean, that's key for kind of all devices that you're going to try and insert into Schlemm's canal. It's so important to get that angulation right. The other thing is, how much Helon do you put in to actually before you go in with the device? Because you don't want to squash everything and sort of flatten your Schlemm's canal by really filling, right? But then on the other hand, you don't have a soft eye. So any sort of, do you measure it in any way? Do you kind of wait until it starts squirting through your wound, or do you stop before? Do you feel how sort of hard the eye is?
I think I do a good fill, to be honest with you, because even when the pressure is high, you can still end up removing some TM, and I think you have an opportunity to still, so I do like to get a reasonable fill. Mm-hmm. I think a pressurized canaloplasty is helpful to really avoid decimate detachments to get that, viscoelastic into the catheter system. So I tend to overpressurize personally. It's different, for example, with Hydrus, something like that. Hydrus, I think if you overpressurize, you could really potentially have more challenges with getting into the TM, not getting into the canal properly. But here you can really scratch the TM, as you said. You can see the outer wall. You can see everything else. That's typically what I do.
Kind of more flexible in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, you have verticalization. You're in the canal, and you're dilating when you're in the canal. So,
what helon are you using to sort of form the eye? Does it make a difference to you?
I think cohesive is ideal. I think cohesive.
Yeah. So let's look at the Tripen Blue video, because that's a video you know about, and it's a very nice video. It just really shows how it works. So this is another colleague of ours. You know him personally, I think. So do you want to talk to that video, Ike, because you know it?
Yeah, I mean, for years we've been using dye to just examine flow and to see, what's happening when we do our procedure. And you can see this example where, the trabecular meshwork is permeable. Here we have Tripen Blue going into the eye and also going to the collector system. And it's some evidence that we've been able to reduce resistance in the TM, and also evidence of flow within the distal alpha system. So, as a clinical scientist, the nice thing to see on the table kind of gives us a bit of proof of evidence of how this is working. I don't know if we're there yet to correlate for success or not, but I think it's a nice example to show visually what's happening as far as, the effect of what we're doing.
Yeah. And so we're getting Tripen Blue into the AC. So that's filtering through the trabecular meshwork, right?
Yeah.
So does that mean it's been thinned out? Does that mean it's been ruptured? What does that mean?
Well, I mean, I don't know if we know exactly. I think that, in this case, I don't know, maybe the AC pressure was not as high, that looks like. I think with enough force, you're going to get Tripen Blue in. Well, we probably are stretching the TM, right? When we're doing an alpha, we're stretching the TM. We're separating the TM beams a bit more. We're probably, allowing for more filtration area to be present. So I would expect that we are reducing the resistance of the wall, and that's evidence that maybe Tripen Blue going in the AC. Hopefully, evidence that aqueous will be able to get through easier as well.
Okay. How many are phaco surgeons here? How many do phaco? Okay. But only one does MIGS, I think, right?
I'm willing to admit it.
A couple of people, okay. Because I think one of the things, and I've heard you mention this several times, and I really believe it, once you're doing a phaco in someone who's on drops for glaucoma, whether they have glaucoma or whether they're just ocular hypertension, it's not just tempting to do something, it's kind of, in a way, it's a shame if you don't. I don't know whether you agree with me, but my point now is, how many combined phaco-canaloplasties do you do? Do you do canaloplasty more as a standalone, or do you do more combined? Would you do it in a phakic or a pseudophakic as a standalone?
Yeah, right now, I mean, as you said, we only have one opportunity to combine a procedure with cataract, the time of cataract, whether it's a toric lens or whether it's a mixed procedure.
Yeah.
So I think that, we should give it a good thought about it. Majority of my procedures are typically combined with phaco. It's a sweet spot for us, but interestingly, we are doing more standalone. When we do standalone, the bar is higher, right? I mean, we have to get out pressure lower. We're going in the eye specifically just to lower pressure. So, I tend to be more aggressive in what I do when I do standalone.
Yeah. And
we do them as phakic eyes, pseudophakic eyes. In those cases, I do tend to add a little bit of cutting. I'll remove some TM. I mean, the catheter's, designed for viscodilation, but it actually works very well to do a small ambulatory trabeculotomy as well. But then I just feel, at least in my hands and the disease level I'm facing, I want to get more of the procedure. And because they're not all early cases, I kind of combine something there. And I find that to be a reasonable approach.
So there was a video I wanted to upload, but I couldn't. I'm so sorry. But I'm occasionally combining as well a stent after a canaloplasty. So you dilate the canal and then you put in a hydra stent, for example. Do you find that sort of beneficial as well? So rather than cutting, sort of stenting or scaffolding, of course, there's more hardware in the eye. So there is the downside of having put something in the eye that some patients come and tell you, I don't want a stent. I don't want any metal in my eye. But on the other hand, I feel sort of, a stent gives you a little bit of a mechanical, if you want. It costs money, of course. So you're adding cost as well. So I don't know what your...
I think we're kind of early. I don't know the answer to that. I think theoretically, I don't think it does more harm personally. And although the cost is the factor, I think that the ability I call it my triple procedure, right? Where we dilate, cut, and stent.
Yeah. Okay.
That's kind of my maximum efficacy procedure I do in the canal.
Yeah.
I figure we kind of address all levels of disease and resistance, and we cover ourselves by opening, but also stenting as well. So that's kind of what I typically do. I think we may have a video of maybe of mine, I don't know, but it's a tracheotomy video I have in there. So that's kind of what I do for standalone more so.
So there definitely is one of your videos. This is not yours, is it? No. So I think just because we have a nice slide here which summarizes the steps. So the paracentesis we've talked about, probably do a different one, 3 clock hours. The cannula alignment, the 15 degrees, that's so important. Making sure you're in Schlemm's canal. Of course, the device helps you. So the catheterization and the viscodilation. So I agree with Ike, you should do it. I mean, I changed my technique after speaking to you a few months ago because I used to only inject on coming out, but now I'm doing it going in and out. I think it helps even create the space and you're putting more viscoelastic in. I think if you truly believe in pure canaloplasty as in itself, just canaloplasty, you want to really dilate those canals, those collected channels, etc. So those are the steps. I think this is yours, isn't it?
Yeah, sure. So this is the iTrack. I mean, it is a newer approach that I think is slicker and more efficient. We can rotate the tip, so depending on what hand we're using, an incision. The incision should be placed, avoid a temporal incision here because I think that we need to approach the angle at the right view. Show that we find the device. Usually we have an assistant who is rotating. They usually, count out loud when they're doing. They go 1, 2, 3. The slider moves the catheter forward and back. And that little spatula tip you see is what we're using to incise the TM. There's a catheter that comes up pretty straight, but it has some flexibility to it to allow it to follow the canal itself. And I'm really kind of like showing off here with my video here, the procedure there, just to show you how it goes back and forth. You'll see my incision. I tend to make my incision, about 3-4 clock hours away from my landing site, as you see here, taking advantage of that curvature, which is gently curved. This is using a double mirror, so there's no tilting of the scope. It's a double mirror. This is nice because you can see 360 degrees, just showing the catheter pass into the canal. Usually we use a gonio prism, but I will often use a double mirror because we don't have to tilt the microscope. We don't have to tilt the patient's head. It's kind of neat. And it's nice to see the catheter go around. You can see it into the canal. Yeah. My assistant is clicking the clicker, so we're injecting, that 3 microliters, every click. And I'm moving depending on the speed of how fast they're talking. So if they're clicking faster, I'll move faster. If they're slower, I'll move slower. And I watch for any cordial issues, it decimates, so I'll then have them stop injecting and I'll move faster. You don't want to stop if you have that issue. And here we're drawing the catheter we're injecting as well. And this basically allows us to really maximize the OBD filling of the canal. And just nicely just shows, what's happening. And if we look closely, you can see the canal bulging. It's like expanded, it's larger, and it kind of shows you it's got more volume, it's an expanded state. And, you can see how easy the catheter passes. So there's some evidence that the canal collapses as part of the cycle of glaucoma. Resistance builds up, TM resistance, the TM starts to invaginate against the outer wall, it collapses. Well, this kind of addresses that second level of resistance, But that's the procedure. You can see the catheter be pulled out and we have it there. This next one I'm going to show you with a gonio prism. And again, approach the TM nasally, use the tongue to kind of scratch the TM. You can try to do it all in one shot. Slide in and then slide the slider cord. It's not, scratch the TM and then back up and then advance the catheter in. Aim 15 to 20 or more degrees up, as we said, Karl, and then, here goes the passage. When we're using a prism, we'll typically go until we lose visualization and then we'll come up. Now we can see the red, the beacon. You can see that the canal itself is, a couple of millimeters back from the limbus, which is expected. The end of the blue zone, which you see there, is the anterior TM. So we expect that the but the catheter will be behind that. We'll go around here 360. This case, I'm going to do an otomy. I typically myself do an inferior 100 degrees abmaternal trabeculotomy. Some people do superiorly. Our results are kind of similar for both, but I feel that by going inferiorly, we're addressing the areas of the highest potential for aqueous outflow.
Plus, you're leaving the superior part for any further.
Potential something more.
Yeah.
Yeah. The downside, if you have bleeding, though, it ends up kind of collecting inferiorly.
Yeah.
The catheter is advanced forward about 180 degrees, and then I will start to move the tip of the iTrack advance following the TM angle, and this basically strips the TM. So we're pulling and we're cutting the trabecular meshwork here. You know, and you can see the TM starting to be removed there. We call it like walking the dog. You know, we kind of push the dog along, we push the catheter along. We avoid pulling to the center of the eye, otherwise the catheter may withdraw back into the tip. And you see we've got about 90 degrees. We rotate along the fulcrum of that superior incision, continuing along there. We can usually get almost 180 with that.
Yeah.
And if we really want to be aggressive, we could do even more on the other side. But 180 is usually enough for me. And that basically is combining viscodilation with otomy. As you said, we can combine it with a stent as well for that opening even.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's another thing. There is flexibility. There are different ways of doing things. Like with anything in surgery, there are what a device has been developed for and what the big studies show, etc. But then every individual will modify their technique to try and get more for the patient. And that sometimes means being less aggressive in your patients who maybe need less, or being much more aggressive, spending some more money using a stent perhaps in those people who need more. So I think that's really key. So I think in terms of concluding comments, I think we exhausted the slide there.
We got Paul Singh here. We're showing your videos, Paul.
Yeah, well, he's up here tomorrow, isn't he? So so I think what canaloplasty shows you is, first of all, it gives you a really good idea of anatomy and physiology. I think that's really fascinating in terms of where aqueous flows. But even if you've seen Ike's last video, how posterior was the Schlemm's canal? So you see this red light. When you're doing deep sclerectomies, which is what I do, you used to do deep sclerectomies as well a long time ago, right? You know, the Schlemm's canal is always somewhere different. It's amazing. So it's so nice to be able to see literally that anatomy with the red light. I think in terms of approaches to glaucoma, I think this is for, of course, the milder types of glaucoma. As always, we'll always find patients where we use devices which are not for what's written on the box, but in general, I would go for early patients with mild glaucoma. I think what you said at the start is there's no test that shows us how early the glaucoma actually it might not be glaucoma, it might be just a predisposition to glaucoma, ocular hypertension, high pressure. There's no particular test right now which tells us that. You could test for myocilin gene, for example, or stuff like that, but there isn't really. But the early ones are the ones who will do better. And this is, of course, minimally invasive. So that's the whole purpose, that you do less, you gain more in the long term. And hopefully you preserve eyes from having surgery. If you do, or if they do need surgery in the future, hopefully you've bought time and you still have loads of tissue to use, especially even if you do trabeculotomy, you know, you always think and plan things. I think that's really, really important. And the last tip from my side is make sure the angle is actually open before you, I mean, of course, again, we will all tell you quotes of cases where the angle was closed, we've opened it and we've managed to put a MIGS or whatever. But don't trust other people telling you an angle is open and go on the surgery day and find out that maybe it isn't. I think we also have to be, you know, sort of thoughtful in that and make that effort of doing gonioscopies on your patients and selecting them properly. That's my 2 pence for the day.
Yeah, I mean, beautiful summary, man. I couldn't have said it any better. I think you've said it really well. I look at this procedure, as I said before, as kind of your base. It's kind of what you build on, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, glaucoma is a disease of resistance, simply put. I mean, we're basically glorified plumbers, right?
Yeah.
You have to basically unblock what the problem is. And I think understanding that there's the 3 levels of resistance, how this works, the beauty of the procedure, the safety of the procedure. I mean, I think those are real important qualities for a procedure that we're going to do early in disease, and allows us to, again, leverage other approaches if need be, as you said, stenting or cutting, depending on the level of disease. I think probably the biggest challenge is kind of, adopting this early. Many of us are doing surgery later in disease, but, convincing ourselves more importantly and our patients that this is something that will be beneficial early on is important. I think that the easiest point of entry is combined cataract surgery because we're already going into the eye as well. And, the safety and the ability to do something more than around eye are attractive. So technique is everything else we've covered already as well.
Thank you.
Amazing host, my
Thanks,
friend.
Thank you.